Plan and Zoning Commission. Welcome to the June 3rd, 2021 meeting of the City of Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm going to read the rules and procedures. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory board to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff at 515-689-9485 for details on council hearings. The applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request. If applicants wish to share materials not already submitted with the application, please email them to planning@desmoinesgov.org so a staff host may be able to share them on the screen when you are present. Proponents and then opponents of the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Staff has attempted to compile a list of people who would like to speak on each item. Staff will first call on these people and then will open it up to anyone else who wishes to speak. To request to speak during the hearing, please use the raise hand function on Zoom webinar via your internet or dial *9 on your phone. Once permission to speak is given, to unmute and mute, dial *6 on your phone. You will be required to give your name and address for the record prior to speaking. Also, we ask that you keep your microphones and your phones on mute unless you have been given the chance to address the commission by the chair. Applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal if any opponents spoke. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. The hearing will then be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or member of the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. Please know that typical accommodations may be limited by emergency requirements as issued by the state of Iowa and the City of Des Moines. Tyler, could you take roll call?
I sure can. Rocky Facade.
Here.
Abby Chungus.
Here.
Will Page.
Here.
Johnny Alcivar. I don't see Johnny on here. I don't see Lisa Howard. Steve Wallace.
Here.
Francis Bogus.
Here.
And Greg Wattier.
Here.
All right.
I think without Johnny, we might be short. He was on a minute ago. This is Jason Van Essen with planning staff.
Oh yeah, I thought we had a quorum earlier when we spoke.
Yeah, right now we're only at 7 folks. 7 commissioners. I saw Johnny on here, so I don't know if he's having technical difficulties.
I just got a text from him. He said having audio issues, rejoining soon.
Lisa and Carolyn indicated they're going to be with us too, so hopefully they'll be jumping on soon as well.
This is Glenna from the legal department. Let's just wait for a few minutes and hope that someone else joins us shortly.
Here's Johnny.
Okay.
Johnny, are you able to hear us and can you speak? Johnny, can you unmute yourself and confirm that you are able to hear us and speak?
If you're on a phone, press *6 to unmute.
I can invite you by phone, question.
Bird, have you heard from Johnny?
I have not. I'm getting ready to send him a phone link. We'll see if that works. All right. All right, Johnny, are you able to hear us?
Hello, this is Johnny. I apologize for the technical issues.
We're just happy you're here.
Yes, and now I think we can move forward. Is that right?
Yeah, we have 8 commissioners present. Is that, Tyler, is that what you have?
That is correct. Carolyn just jumped on too, so we got 9.
Perfect. Do you need to do another roll call or just ask those 2 people?
I think we're good. Carolyn, can you confirm that you're able to hear and speak? Carolyn Jensen. Well, we know we have a 8. Let's move forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can I get a motion for approval of the minutes from the May 2021?
This is Will Page. I'll approve them. I'll move approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Will. Tyler?
All right, Abby Chungus,
Yes.
Greg Wattier,
Yes.
Francis Bogus,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison, all right, Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Emily Webb,
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
and Rocky Sposato.
Yes.
So that motion carries 8-0. We'll have Carolyn abstain from that vote since she didn't respond.
Thank you, Tyler. I'll now read the consent public hearing items. Number 1, request from the state of Iowa, represented by Sherry Myers, for vacation of the following segments of street of right-of-way adjoining property at 524 4th Street, occupied by the Iowa Department for the Blind. A 6.5 foot by 43 foot segment of surface rights from the south edge of Watson Powell Jr. Way to allow for accessible entrance ramp to the north entrance of the building. An 11 foot by 9.7 foot segment of subsurface rights from the south edge of Watson Powell Jr. Way for existing basement encroachment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to move this item from the consent agenda and have it discussed this evening?
Please use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone.
Is there anyone from the commission that would like to pull this item from consent? This item will remain on consent agenda tonight. Number 2, request from Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity, represented by Tammy Crikes, for review and approval of a public site plan hearing for the following type 2 design alternatives for property located at 4110 Southwest 5th Street to allow construction of a House D building type in an N5 neighborhood district. allow a 12.25 foot street side setback along Leach Avenue, and a waiver of the required garage with provision of a 120 square foot storage shed. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to review this item tonight?
Please use the raise hand function or *9. We have an individual like to hear this item.
Okay, so we will pull this from consent. Number 3, request from RM Madden Construction, Inc., represented by Michael Madden, for review and approval of public site plan for allowing type 2 design alternatives in accordance with city codes for property located at 2390 Harold Avenue to allow construction of a 2-story House B building type in N3A neighborhood districts, allow transparency of 6% transparency on first floor, which is 50% less than 12% minimum, allow 16.33 foot wide attached garage door that is 51.6% of the front backade width, which is greater than 30% maximum required by the city code. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this item? Anyone on the commission? Number 3 will stay on the consent agenda. Number 4, city initiated requests for the following regarding the property located at 2014 and 2016 East Ovid Avenue. The subject property is owned by CM Real Estate LLC. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM, Creating Our Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan. Rezone property from P1 Public Civic and Institutional District to I1 Industrial District to allow the existing buildings to be brought into compliance with their existing professional office and warehouse uses. Is there anyone in the public that would like to hear this item? Anyone on the commission? This will remain on consent agenda. Number 5, request from Legacy Park LLC, represented by Russ Frazier, for the following regarding the property located at 1315 to 1325 9th Street and 1322 to 1332 8th Street. Determination as to whether the requested zoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM, Creating Our Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan. Rezone property from N5 Neighborhood District to N52 Neighborhood District to allow a 2-household dwelling to be rebuilt after destruction by fire and allow other existing 2-household living uses on the subject property to be brought into compliance. Does anyone in the audience want to hear this item?
Use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone.
Anyone on the commission? All right, we will keep that on the consent agenda. Number 6, request from Flummerfelt Eagle Point LLC, represented by Mike Flummerfelt, for the following property regarding property located at 1985 East Army Post Road. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning and large-scale development plan is in conformance with the Plan DSM, Creating Our Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan. Amendment to the Plan DSM, Creating Our Tomorrow Plan to revise the future land use classification from medium density residential to business park for a portion of the property to the north. Review and approval of a large-scale development plan for the site redevelopment of 18.5 acres for mobile home park expansion. Rezone property from X mixed use to NM neighborhood district to allow use of the property for expansion of the mobile home park currently under construction. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this item?
Please use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone.
Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, we will move on to number 7, petition from Angela Young, 935 24th Street, to name a segment of Washington Avenue between Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and 16th Street with an honorary name, Dr. Bobby Young Avenue. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this item? Anyone on the commission? All right, seeing none, there are two items that are on the public hearing that I believe need to be moved to consent. Number 11 and number 13. So I will read those and then we will need a motion to move them. So I will move to number 11. Request from Mid-American Energy, represented by Pam McNaughton, for the following property located at 2400 East County Line Road. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM Creating Our Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan, amendment to the Plan DSM Creating Our Tomorrow Plan to revise future land use classification, review and approval of a large-scale development plan, and rezone property from N2B to I2. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this item tonight?
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Esten at city's planning staff. I just want to clarify that the applicant on item 11 and then the next item have both agreed to the staff recommendation. And in the case of item 11, we are actually recommending that an I1 zoning, and they've agreed to that. Please use raise hand function or *9 if you'd like to speak on the item.
So instead of I2, it's I1.
Yes, that's what the staff recommendation is.
Okay.
I'm not seeing anybody that wishes to speak on the item.
Perfect. I will move to number 13. Request from Dunto LLC, represented by Adam Siren and Ryan Andrini, for the following items regarding property at 524 Indianola Road, 711 Monona Ave, and 713 Monona Ave to be readdressed 550 Indianola Road. Review and approval of a preliminary plat, Monona Townhomes. Review and approval of a public site plan, Monona Townhomes, for the following type 2 design alternatives. I'm not going to read them all, but it's a series of design alternatives, relief requests. Does anyone in the audience want to hear this item? Anyone on the commission? Oh, I see a hand raise.
So I'm just going to confirm, make sure this isn't the applicant. I just want to confirm if. So the number at 515-306-3083, if you can unmute yourself by hitting *6 and just confirm that you would like this removed from the consent agenda and would like to speak against the item. Can you unmute yourself? 306-3083. *6 on your phone. I think we'll have to go ahead and hear the item.
Okay.
We can see what their concerns are at that point.
Okay. So for consent, I have items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 11. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Carolyn. I'll move the consent.
Thank you, Carolyn. Tyler?
All right. Greg Wattier.
Yes.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
And Abby Chunga.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Thank you, Tyler. We will now move on to the public hearing. As requested, item number 2 was pulled from consent, and we will hear that item first. I'll just briefly recap. It's a request from the Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity, represented by Tammy Craigs, for review and approval of a public site plan for the following type 2 design alternatives. It's A and B, which I read earlier. Jason, I believe you're going to be presenting this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen with the city's planning staff. Aerial identifying the subject property. It is on the northwest corner of Leach Avenue and south with West 5th Street. See, it's a vacant lot. Have a few photographs of the site. Habitat for Humanity is proposing a house, new construction. And part of the relief is the setback from Leach Avenue. They're proposing 12.25 setback from their south property line. You can see kind of how that relates to the sidewalk. It's about, their property line is probably about a foot behind the walk, and then there's curb line. From Southwest 5th, they'd have a 45-foot setback, which is pretty comparable to the house to the north when you look at it in the aerial. They are proposing a shed in lieu of a garage and with the driveway off of Leach Avenue. Just the floor plan, one-story house with a basement. Here's the building elevations. Just some information from the applicant on their analysis of the garage proposal. Staff report, we are recommending approval of the request. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the shed versus garage. You know, we've discussed that. That's part of the code amendments. We think this fits the criteria of what we're expecting. You look around in the neighborhood, it's a neighborhood that has other properties in it that do not have a garage. So it fits the character we believe as staff. And then with the setback, that's the other part. I think that what they're proposing is reasonable. There's just not a lot of space. The lot is a buildable lot. There's a legal right to be able to build on it. It's not a terribly large house. We don't believe as staff that they're trying to overbuild the house. It would set back from the corner with that 45-foot setback from the west property line, the east property line. So staff is recommending approval. This is the response map. We didn't have anybody submit anything in with a written signature that would allow us to put that on the response map, but we did get an email from a neighbor who requested that and be pulled tonight, mentioning some concern about the house proximity to the street and high speeds. I'll let them go into a little greater detail. Happy to answer any questions you might have for staff.
Thanks, Jason. Now we'll give the applicant time to present.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Lance.
Good evening. Thank you, members of the commission. Lance Henning with Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity, 2200 East Euclid in Des Moines. And that I think the main pieces were covered in the presentation there, that we are asking the lot of record on there kind of follows the original plat in the neighborhood. And so being able to have the setback on the corner allows us to be able to fit the house there. And it matches the neighborhood and the characteristic. The house plan itself, that it'll end up, there will be 5 bedrooms overall. It's the upstairs floor on there is about 1,158 square feet. And we expect that this will appraise out at about 190,000. The average immediately around the neighborhood there was 115,000 as far as the valuation of the home. So we do believe we're adding value to the neighborhood. With the existing or the sidewalk and the way that'll lay out, we do believe that'll keep traffic separated from the yard and the aspects going on there. And then for an exemption on the garage. We, as was noted, we are adding the storage shed, both with a full basement and the storage shed. We believe there's more than adequate room for storage and aspect on there. And believe that we are fitting the characteristic of the neighborhood and adding value to that. So I think I'll keep the comments to there, and appreciate your guys' consideration and all that's helping to move this forward.
Thank you, Lance. Do we have any speakers in support of this item tonight? Seeing none, do we have any speakers in opposition? As a reminder, *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. I see a hand raised. I'm not sure, maybe this person.
Yeah, Andrea, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there, thank you. I'm the neighbor that had sent in the email. So I think our primary concern, we've been here since the prior house was on that location. The prior house was actually a lot smaller, and it was still kind of intrusive being so close to the street in the view. I guess I have one, primary question. The way that when we read the original sheet, we read that as 12.25 feet away from the street side. So is this saying that it's actually from the edge of the sidewalk or the edge of the street? That's one question that I do have.
Chair, would you like me to answer that, or do you want to, or me to wait?
I think you can answer.
Okay. The setback is calculated based on your actual property line, and the sidewalk and the grass between the sidewalk and the curb are part of the public right of way. Sidewalks are usually constructed about a foot or so off the property line. So you're in this case, if you look at this drawing that's on the screen, the property line is that dark line. So, and the curb line is the furthest point out with the trees. So that if from back a curb, it's probably closer to, over 20 feet.
Okay.
25.
That does help. I have no concern about not having a garage there. I think our main concern is it being too close to the street. Like I said, it actually used to be a very, very hectic intersection. There were quite a few accidents there. People come down from Southwest 9th quite fast. So we're just, we live right across the street from there. We have kids that are out playing, and, our biggest concern is having it too close to the street and having a car drive in the side of it, or having, more accidents. It's not a four-way stop at that intersection, so people are not slowing down. So, we worry about the house being too close.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers in opposition? All right. Are there any questions for staff from the commissioners? And applicant does get some time for rebuttal. So Lance, if you have anything you need to add here in rebuttal.
No direct comments on rebuttal. So.
All right, thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Any commissioners have thoughts on this?
Madam Chair, Rocky, I'll move staff.
All right, thanks, Rocky. Tyler?
All right, Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Johnny Alcibar.
Yes.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
And Abby Chungith.
Yes.
That motion carries 10-0.
All right, thank you, Tyler. We're going to move on to public hearing item number 8. A public hearing regarding proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance and planning and design ordinance. Determination as to whether the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance and planning and design ordinance are in conformance with the Plan DSM creating our tomorrow comprehensive plan, and adoption of the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance and planning and design ordinance. And it's my understanding that Mike Ludwig is here to discuss these items.
Madam Chair and members of the Commission, Michael Ludwig, Deputy Director of Development Services for the City of Des Moines. Before you this evening is a public hearing on amendments to the existing Chapter 134, which is our city's zoning code, and Chapter 135, which is our planning and design ordinance. Basically, both of these chapters were rewritten and adopted with ordinances in October of 2019. There were immediate amendments approved to the codes in December of 2019. And as part of that, we ran into some difficulties with the files, the electronic files for the documents. Those difficulties resulted in some manual page numbering and photocopying of previously printed copies of the code, which really distorted some of the images that were in the document. It also prevented us from removing, say, draft stamps on the documents and from correcting typos and things that have been in the code. So we've worked for the last year implementing the new code and then also rebuilding the document in an electronic format that can be edited. And so the document in front of you this evening is basically that document. Most of the minor revisions in the code for both chapters 134 and 135 are things such as removing the draft stamps, page numbers, things like that, removing references to community development directors, since we now have reorganized community development and economic development into a development services department and a neighborhood services department. So we had to remove all the references to previous references to community development director in the code. So those were like the minor revisions to both of those chapters. We also proposed some major revisions. We presented those to you at the work session at your last meeting. And, you know, in chapter 134, a majority of the things were addressing legacy provisions for planned unit developments that carried into the new code. We also made some revisions to our principal use table, allowing additional uses in, say, industrial districts, for example, allowing some more like commercial uses like restaurants in some of the industrial districts. We are deleting the short-term commercial rental regulations from Chapter 134. Those were superseded by state code. And so we are no longer able to regulate that. And so we need to delete those provisions from our code. In our accessory use categories in the Chapter 134, we have added some additional accessory uses for a bus shelter or bench for transit use, public transit use, and also for basically automated accessory structures. So if you think about it, we've had some interest in drone delivery in the city, and this would be possibly some remote stations where those deliveries could be made to on a commercial property. We also have some changes to our code regarding signage. Primarily, what we're proposing in that is making all signage relief or square footage or number of signs be a type 1 exception from the Plan and Zoning Commission or from the Board of Adjustment instead of a variance. That would not apply to billboards or prohibited signs such as electronic signs. So it's mainly just static signs that routinely have gone to the Board of Adjustment for relief to the size or the number. That's mainly the major changes in Chapter 134, the zoning chapter. We are also proposing major changes in Chapter 135 of the code. And just in summary, again, there are some changes for the planned unit development district, the legacy district, that just basically says if the PUD, the planned unit development document, is silent on an issue such as fencing or lighting, that the staff can apply the current code requirements for lighting or fencing for those properties. It follows really how we implemented those provisions under the old code, but we are clarifying that in this document. Again, we have eliminated some of the required ground floor commercial space on some of the more auto dominant corridors and zoning districts and building types, basically allowing horizontal mixed use on a site rather than necessarily mandating mixed use with commercial on the ground floor of a vertical mixed use in the same building. We have proposed to amend some of the window facade requirements on single-family residential homes on the non-primary street frontage, so on the side of the house. We are reducing that window requirement for residential, being consistent across the board for those, for all housing types. There's just a reformatting of the capital dominance requirements that were approved by the commission previously in December of last year. Accessory structures, again, we've proposed to allow scoreboards for municipal stadiums, for example, high school fields and sporting fields, to be an accessory structure rather than a sign. Typically, those have had to go to the Board of Adjustment for a variance in the past, and now they would just be a accessory structure under Chapter 135, since the messaging on those is intended for the attendees of the events. It's not intended to be advertising to passing motorists. We are making a modification to the facade material requirements. Right now, the code technically requires masonry to return 20 feet around the corner of a building. That also applies on a residential property if it's there. We've not been applying it in that manner. We've been only requiring it to go 2 feet on a residential house. So this code clarifies that provision of the code. And then we have clarified some of our landscape calculations. One issue that has been a major item that's been on several Plan and Zoning Commission agendas has been sidewalk installation requirements. And you obviously have had numerous requests for waivers of sidewalk installation on streets where there's no existing sidewalk today. It would be the only lot on the block for several blocks that would have a sidewalk. And so we did do some review of that with a council at a workshop and with the city manager's office. And basically what is proposed in this ordinance would be that a type 1 design alternative, which would be an administrative decision, could be granted to waive sidewalks on priority 2 and priority 3 corridors that are identified in the MOVE DSM transportation plan. On priority 1 sidewalk routes, staff could allow a deferral of the installation subject to provision of a escrow agreement for that installation. Those priority 1 sidewalks or corridors are where the city is planning sidewalk installations in the near future. And so those escrow funds, if we deferred the construction to allow it to time with the city project, we would put those escrow funds into the budget for that sidewalk construction. But we do believe there is a reasonable time frame for those escrow agreements. We would have to continually extend them. And on priority 2 and 3 corridors, those are so far out. They're not in our capital improvement budget. It will be more than 10 years before those priority 2 and priority 3 sidewalks would ever be addressed by the city. There's a strong likelihood that if we make somebody put in a sidewalk now for a single lot, that it could be many, many years before any other sidewalk is installed in that area. It would potentially be replaced before any sidewalk would be installed in that area. And there may be no sidewalk ever in some of those areas. So we think that by allowing it to be a type 1 design alternative, we think that that's an improvement. We do think that it gives staff a little bit more flexibility to deal with it administratively rather than making it come to the Planning Commission. I will say that if we believe there is sidewalk imminent, or if there is sidewalk in the vicinity, we can still make the sidewalk be installed. And if staff does not grant the type 1 design alternative in that instance, they would still be able to come to the Planning Commission and seek relief. But we do think that this will reduce some of the workload on the Planning Commission, where we've had to deal with sidewalks recently, and it deals with it in a fair manner. Another major change of item that has been for the commission, and you just had one on the agenda tonight, was the garage requirement. We are proposing that we eliminate the character analysis. Currently, code requires staff to do an analysis of properties within 250 feet of the subject property. If more than 50% of the properties within that 250-foot boundary have garages, then the code currently requires a garage to be built. And if they want a waiver of that, they have to come to the Plan and Zoning Commission. We are proposing to eliminate that character calculation analysis and ultimately allow staff to grant a type 1 design alternative to waive the garage subject to provision of the 150 square foot shed on the property. And we think that obviously follows what the commission has granted. You just granted it on the agenda tonight. You've granted it multiple times throughout the past year. And so we think that we're just realistically eliminating time and process and making that a more user-friendly provision in the code. Other than that, I think most of the items on the major list that I've tried to highlight those. There are others listed there. Those documents are available for review on the Plan DSM website, both the minor and major revisions. And, we do believe that we are committed to making this code better, making revisions. Our previous code was adopted in 1965, had over 350 amendments to it over the 50 years of its existence. We've had 4 amendments to the code so far in a year, and we are committed to additional rounds of review of issues people have with the code and evaluating those. But at this time, we do think it's critical to move forward with the ordinance as presented, because obviously in the current code documents that are online, the links to section numbers and that to make the code more user-friendly are not, they don't function in the current PDFs. And so these new documents make those links functional. The current documents, because they're scanned on a copy machine and posted to the website versus created from an electronic document, they don't meet accessibility requirements. And so it's very imperative that we get these documents adopted so that we have more accessible documents available for the public. That helps with people who have vision impairment that use an electronic reader to be able to use the code online. And so we do think that those are very important things to get corrected and get adopted so that we can post those documents permanently on the city's website. Again, there will be an additional round of discussions on revisions to the code later this fall, and those revisions will continue on. It's a living document. So with that, the staff is recommending that the commission find these proposed amendments and versions, PDFs of the code in conformance with Plan DSM, creating our tomorrow comprehensive plan. And we are recommending approval of the proposed amendments. I'm available if you have any questions.
Mike, this is Will Page here. I do have a question about Article 8, the sidewalk installation requirements. This is very helpful to clarify what the city wants and wishes for everyone concerned, including the commissioners. Particularly the escrow agreement, I think, is a solution to a problem that's been out there for quite a while. I assume that Traffic and Transportation has gone along and approved all of this. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But sort of in conclusion, I want to thank you and everyone in the city that's done this, both with Article 8 and all the rest of them. But also I suggest that since this has been resolved, and I think satisfactorily, that we should dissolve the ad hoc committee that was originally established to find the solution that the city has found. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question and comments. Yeah, I think we've reached a good compromise on this. The actual formalities of the escrow agreement still have to be realized or drafted. The Traffic and Transportation Department was a part of these discussions, and so clearly at the council workshop when we discussed with the council, I mean, this is a change from council's previous direction to our engineering staff as well. So they've been involved in the discussions, and our thoughts on the escrow agreement are that we will come up with a simple per lineal foot estimate for sidewalk that can be multiplied by the frontage. And then there will be we've discussed having a cap on the escrow agreement that would be limited to a percentage of the value of the property to kind of fall in line with the current state code requirements on assessments. So like if the city were to put in a sidewalk and assess a property owner, we have a cap on what we can assess based on the percentage of the value of the property. And so we would do a similar provision in our escrow agreement to kind of line up with that state assessment law. So I think we found a good compromise on it, and I appreciated the input of the committee early on in this process. You clearly raised this as an issue, and it took us some time to find a solution. We had to really look at a lot of different things, and it was a challenge, but I hope that this is a reasonable compromise. Thank you.
Mike, this is Johnny. I have a question. I echo a lot of Will, his comments, and thank staff for their work on this solution. I have just a point of clarification. Does this apply to greenfield development and infill development?
Well, obviously, anyone could request it. I would not see this being a new subdivision allowance. I mean, a new subdivision coming in, we should be getting sidewalks put in with a new subdivision development, just like any other utility in that subdivision. This is really more geared towards infill development, where this is a permit to an existing house that currently, if the valuation of the permit is greater than 50%, if the cumulative value of permits is greater than 50% of the value of the property, then they have to fully comply with the code, which means they have to put a sidewalk in. And so, this is really geared towards existing neighborhoods where it's an existing structure that doesn't have a sidewalk today. There's no sidewalk in the area. This would give us the ability to grant a type 1 design alternative to waive the sidewalk requirement, or if it was on a priority 1 street, allow them the opportunity to place funds in an escrow that could be combined with city funds when the city project comes in to put the sidewalks on the entire frontage. So this is really geared towards infill development. Yep.
Just a follow up to that. And then you mentioned that priority 1 projects or sidewalks are targeted in the next 10 years. Are priority 2 then the next 20? And I assume that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't think priority 1 is necessarily 10 years. I mean, I'm just saying, we have a limited amount of budget that can go into the sidewalks on an annual basis. And so we know it is at least 10 years or more of work on priority 1 sidewalks. It's 10 would be a very minimal estimate on that timeline. So priority 2 and priority 3, they're so far out in our capital improvement budget that, I mean, literally, we would be asking someone to put in a sidewalk and it would probably be crumbled and need replaced before we would ever see the city project coming in to put in the sidewalk at that point. So I don't have an absolute time frame on when we'll be done with all the priority 1 sidewalks, but it is a substantial period of time, and it was longer than we were comfortable holding escrow funds or tracking those escrow funds for those longer term projects that may never have a sidewalk. Quite honestly, there are certain neighborhoods where I don't know that some neighborhoods will have sidewalks in some of those cases. So this was reviewed with our traffic and transportation department and with their consultants and agreement. Thank you.
All right. Are there any speakers from the public in support of these proposals from Mike?
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Lance Henning.
Hello, members of the commission. Lance Henning with Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity, 2200 East Euclid. And I just wanted to say that these make a lot of sense, and that from all the conversations that we've had, that appreciate how we're being listened, and that the changes are happening here that will help around housing in Des Moines as part of some of these changes here. So thankful for those and supportive of these changes.
Thank you, Lance. I completely agree with you. I'm really happy to see these updates too. Are there any speakers in opposition?
Use the raise hand function or *9 on your cell phone.
Questions for staff? I know we already kind of covered that, but are there any further questions? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. And commissioners, what are your thoughts?
It's Francis Bogus. I move staff.
All right. Thanks, Francis. Tyler?
All right, Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
Abby Chunga.
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Johnny Alcibar.
Yes.
And Emily Webb.
Yes.
The motion carries 10-0.
All right. Thank you, Mike, for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, commissioners.
All right, we'll move on to item 9. This is a request from Fairway Stores, represented by Garrett Pitclap, for review and approval of a public site plan for the following type 2 design alternatives for property located at 2716 Beaver Ave and 2723 41st Place. The two items, 1 and 2, are allow one entrance less than the 2 required entrances on a primary frontage facade. And number 2, allow 41% transparency on the ground floor of the primary footage, which is 36.9% less than the minimum 65% required. And Jason, I think you are up.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen with the planning staff. Before I get started with my presentation, I just want to reiterate the Chair's reading of the agenda. The Commission's task tonight is to review the design, to look at these 2 type 2 design alternative requests, and that's really the focus of the presentation. The last time the general concept of a Fairway store at this site was before the commission. That was a rezoning request to add some land to the site. That rezoning request was ultimately approved by the city council with some zoning conditions. But tonight we're really looking at the architecture of the building itself. Subject property on the southwest corner of the intersection of Beaver Avenue and Urbandale Avenue. I'll quickly show the site plan. One thing I do want to point out, I think the drawings that got posted on our website may have been an older set that didn't show the parking lot set back. One of the zoning conditions that the applicant agreed to was to set this parking lot back from 41st here, a distance equal to the house to the south. And we have the updated drawings here in this presentation. So just quickly, landscaping plan, kind of see the footprint of the building. Everything that we're really talking about on the agenda is really dealing with this front facade along Beaver Avenue, number of entrances and transparency. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to the east elevation, which face Beaver Avenue. In the staff recommendation, we're generally supportive. We had a couple comments, and since they're all related to the architecture, I'm just going to go over them right now since you have the drawing in front of you, and it'll make a little more sense. Just noting that there's two types of glass. This all looks like windows, but some of it's a spandrel because there's back of house type activities. And I have the floor plan. We can show you that along Beaver Avenue. It was unclear to us if this really, their 41% of transparency, whether or not that was including the spandrel and whether or not the spandrel glass would comply with the light transmission, excuse me, can't talk tonight, requirements. So we want to clarify that with the applicant. We recognize there are some limitations to visibility here. That's why we're generally supportive of the concept, but we did have a condition addressing that. I think the bigger one that we have comment on is how this entrance is treated. We would like to see the architecture react to that in a little stronger way. I believe this area here is restrooms, and then maybe this is kind of a display area. But I think there's a way to look at to manipulate this part of the facade and give it a little stronger of an entrance feel. If you look at the doorway that faces towards the parking lot, that has a more like this is an obvious entrance to the building feel to it. And that's what we're looking for here. I know this will always be somewhat secondary of an entrance and how they operate inside. I think it's important to have that visual cue. And to me, that's probably even more important than the transparency question, is making this look a little more like a front entrance. We don't have anything that we're specifically saying in our staff rec that this is what you got to do. Absolutely. We want to just continue to work with the applicant and just let them know that that's something that we'd like them to work on. Here's that floor plan. So that entrance, the way the code is set up for this type of building type, this amount of frontage would require two entrances. I think one is fine. Like I said, just it needs to have a little more emphasis to it. See restrooms along that part of the facade, and then we have an employee area along here. This is the main entrance off the parking lot side. Staff report was in the packet. We include all the criteria for type 2 design review, design alternative review. Won't spend a lot of time on that. I've kind of already covered what our thoughts are as staff, and we are recommending, whoops, did it very well tonight, apologize. We are recommending approval, just with the condition that entrance be a little more prominent to the satisfaction of staff, and that we just get a little more information on the transmissive factor for the glass. This is the notice area. We didn't get any signed written comments. I don't think we've received any emails or any other correspondence from neighbors. Happy to answer any questions you might have for staff.
Hello, Jason. This is Greg Wattier. What building type are they complying with?
It's the storefront is the most appropriate given the zoning and then the function.
I think my specific question would be, how did you feel about the architecture, in particular the hats on top and sort of the way they're doing their parapet work? How does that fit within that building type?
Let's see if I can get back to the. I think it generally complies. I would like to see a little stronger reaction on the Beaver Avenue side, and that goes back to the my comments on the architecture and the entrance. Let me go back here. So I believe they've broken it down. They have articulation. I understand this to be kind of the backside of the parapet or emphasis point on the parking lot side. So, it'd be good to have a little height here, I think, on the Beaver Avenue side. But generally, from a material standpoint, I think they've hit what we're looking for. And it's broken up. The bigger questions is just really does it feel like the front of a building or is it more of a secondary side or facade? And I think if we can get a little more emphasis around that entrance, we can give it a little stronger front feel to it.
Do you feel they hit the requirements of cornice and bottom of building and horizontal datums and?
Yeah, we were comfortable with that. I mean, there's a fair amount of articulation there, I think, and it really breaks it down into separate components. There's always, I think it's a balancing act a little bit with just the fact that it is just, somewhat, there's some back of house functions, not along the whole part of that facade, but in a couple of sections where they have the employee area and then the restrooms. But I would like to see just greater emphasis in this area as more of a primary entrance, kind of treating it almost as an equal to the parking lot side. I don't want to specifically spell out how to do that. I kind of was looking for a reaction from the applicant. Just with the time allowance, we haven't had the opportunity to visit with them since the staff report went out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Jason. Now I'll have the applicant come forward and state their name, address, and they have 10 minutes to present.
Austin, are you representing Fairways project tonight?
Hi, yes. This is Austin Weidel with Simonson Associates Architects, 1717 Ingersoll Avenue here in Des Moines. And I am speaking on the behalf of the applicant, which is Fairway. I'd like to quickly kind of touch on the background of our design intent. We've been in collaboration with Fairway for the past 12 months, trying to kind of blend the Beaverdale characteristics with Fairway's meat market concept, specifically their Ames store, which has a little bit more of a modern spin to it. So that's why you kind of see a little bit more of this modernized architecture with polling, the red brick and stuff that Jason alluded to, the ornamental brick accessories and detailing, ornamental cornices, and trying to create that nice blend with the concept that they're trying to use moving forward. And then I'd like to touch on the outstanding items for the commission's consideration. regarding the primary entrance. Jason, if you can go back to the floor plan, please. On a previous sheet, and you touched on this, but basically it comes down to the operational functionality that Fairway uses with all their stores, basically having the same entry point on the west, the same entry, the same checkout point, and create kind of a flow through the store. And so obviously we want that off of the parking lot. Something for your consideration with that door on the east side, maybe if we were to see if Fairway is in agreement to move that door a little bit to the north, so it's more of a central focal point on that northeast corner element. Maybe that would help, and that's up for your consideration. And with the transparency there along Beaver Avenue, as Jason alluded to, some of it's spandrel glazing and some of it's vision glazing. We understand the reason for the requirement. The transparency requirement is to engage the street and the pedestrian activity. Back to the operational functionality, that's the back of house. So we don't know if we want people seeing in there. A potential solution for your consideration would potentially be to activate that sidewalk more with additional landscaping, benches, lighting, and maybe we look at a mural on that spandrel glass and collaborate with the neighborhood to try to create something special there. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers in support in the audience tonight?
Please use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone.
Any speakers in opposition? I see some hands raised.
Yeah, David, go ahead and speak. Introduce yourself and unmute yourself and introduce yourself. David DeBoer, did you mean to raise your hand? You have the ability to unmute yourself.
How do I unmute myself?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is David DeBoer. I live at 2700 41st Place. The Planning and Zoning Commission made a correct decision last month to deny the abusive site plan by Fairway. Unfortunately, the mayor and city council chose to ignore your decision, and they approved Fairway's plan to tear down a Beaverdale brick house to put in a parking lot and driveway access from 41st Place, an adjoining residential street. Now Fairway has returned to ask for yet another variance. No pedestrian access from Beaver Avenue. No door on the Beaver Avenue facade of their shiny new store. Fairway wants the cachet of being in Beaverdale. They surely want a Beaver Avenue address because that's good for marketing. However, they don't want an access from Beaver. They want access from their own parking lot that has access from 41st Place, where, by the way, as I mentioned, they're going to tear down a Beaverdale brick house. If there's not a pedestrian access from Beaver, then perhaps Fairway address should be on 41st Place. After they tear down the Beaverdale brick house, there will be an available address for them to use, 2723 41st Place. Beaverdale is a walking neighborhood, and the Beaverdale shopping area is a walk-to destination. Walkers pass by my house. I'm about a block away. They push new lawnmowers, wheelbarrows, and other items from Ace Hardware, packages of food, clothing, other items from other Beaverdale shops typically move down our sidewalk. Day, night, summer, winter. Individuals and then entire families go to Beaver Avenue to shop, dine, pick up to-go food, and enjoy the ambience of the area. In the past couple of days, I've walked to the Beaverdale post office, stopped at Ace Hardware, visited the now open Beaverdale bookstore, all of which have accessible front doors, not hidden entrances tucked into a hidden off-street facade. Imagine trying to shop at Fairway after visiting any of the other stores on Beaver. I see a Fairway sign, but how do I get in? Perhaps if the decision makers at Fairway actually spent some time in the neighborhood, they would see the abusive, uninformed nature of their decision making. As far as I know, no one from Fairway has stopped for a face-to-face discussion with a nearby resident, except finally, after the fact, a few days ago, a Fairway rep did talk to one of the neighbors. I've been supportive of Fairway in their very first site plan, not the current one. And I hope they truly want to be a good member of the Beaverdale community. All they have to do is remember that they are in a community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Looks like we have another hand raised. If you want to unmute yourself, *6, so you can speak.
Hello?
We can
Go
hear
ahead,
you.
Jay.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to know exactly when to raise my hand because I'm not necessarily opposed to the applicant receiving these exemptions, but very much on the condition that some of the concerns city staff has raised are addressed. In any event, I don't enjoy speaking extemporaneously, so I wrote something. Some of these will have been addressed now between Jason and Austin and Dave, but I'll hammer it out quickly since I think it communicates my thoughts. My name is Jay Cox Kozel. I'm the owner of Backcountry at 2702 Beaver Avenue and the current treasurer for the Beaverdale Neighborhood Association, though my comments today are not on behalf of its board of directors. At a meeting of this commission last fall, I spoke in favor of the applicant's request to be rezoned to MX3. I was then and remain today excited about this development and its potential to become a cornerstone of the Beaverdale Business District. That said, I worry that the proposed site plan is neither inviting nor particularly accessible to pedestrian patrons of our commercial corridor. Despite the applicant's repeated claims that the walkability of the Beaverdale Business District is one of the features that most interested them in the site. I agree that walkability is one of the main assets of our neighborhood's commercial area, and I believe it is critical to our future as well. Indeed, the city of Des Moines, as well as other entities, both public and private, spent considerable resources a decade ago on a skate project along the avenue to enhance and ensure the walkability of the area in perpetuity. The shape of the question and the surrounding traffic patterns undoubtedly present some design challenges to which I'm sympathetic. For instance, I understand the applicant's desire to have their main entrance parking lot, particularly after committing so much capital, financial and otherwise, to acquiring the scale of parking lot it appears they will have. And I don't doubt that this orientation means that including pedestrian access from Beaver Avenue presents challenges with regard to the interior floor plan of the business. But I also trust that the applicant has many talented and well-compensated people capable of meeting just such a challenge. I would also submit that this request that there be prominent pedestrian access from Beaver Avenue was utterly predictable, and the extent to which it wasn't foreseen by the applicant reflects a shortcoming in their design and public outreach processes rather than grounds for an exemption from zoning requirements with which they were surely familiar. That a business in the heart of Beaverdale's business district should have prominent pedestrian access on Beaver Avenue seems to me so self-evident that I struggle to even articulate discrete reasons why. I trust that those of you familiar with the neighborhood will agree. So at the risk of hyperbole, I think it will suffice to say that such an access is necessary for the applicant to fulfill its long-stated commitment to build to suit the neighborhood and also to avoid having its literal back turned toward the business community it seeks to join. As regards the matter of ground floor transparency, while I'm certain that an unimpeded behind-the-scenes view of the goings-on of a meat counter wouldn't be a highlight of the Beaverdale Business District experience, incorporating enough translucency that passersby can at least sense the activity and bustle inside the business would add to the sense of vibrancy in the neighborhood's commercial area. I am eager to welcome the applicant to the neighborhood, but I ask that they amend their site plan to reflect and enhance the aspect of our business district that drew them to it in the first place, and which they have promised to maintain: walkability. I believe this can be done in three ways. First, as city staff has recommended, incorporate a more prominent two-way pedestrian access point on Beaver Avenue to remain open during business hours. Second, as city staff has also recommended, use glass with a higher transmittance factor on the facades along both Beaver and preferably also Urbandale Avenues. And lastly, as some of the residents of 41st Place have requested, make the westernmost parking lot access exit only to reduce points of conflict between vehicles and pedestrians. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. I do have one request. Could you email that letter for the record to Jason? He said he'll email you, so you have his email address.
Certainly.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other speakers in opposition or neutral this evening? Any questions for staff at this point? The applicant will now have 5 minutes for rebuttal. If you'd like to rebut what was just said.
Yes, this is Austin Weidel, Simonson Associates again. I'd just like to reiterate kind of the driving factor is Fairway's fixture plan. With not having another entry point there on the northeast corner, it helps with loss prevention and stuff like that. And I'd like to bring up that Ace Hardware across the street doesn't have much of the glazing as well. I realize that's an old ordinance, but I would like to bring that up as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with no other comments, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the commissioners for their thoughts on this.
This is Francis Bogus speaking. I'd like to address the issues. I also live in the neighborhood. I live 4 blocks from the intersection. I walk to and from the neighborhood extensively. But the reality is that some people do shopping with walking, and some do it with automobiles. And I think this Fairway has demonstrated a commitment to the community. They've gotten input. The B&A Association voted 10-1 in favor of this proposed site plan. I think this would add a lot to the community and the neighborhood. I think they would be a good neighbor. And I think having them with only one entrance is similar to Ace Hardware across the street, even though it's under an old zone, and also the transparency issue. But also the Saints across the street from also only had one entrance, and they're remodeling it now. So I would support staff in this site plan, and I think it's Fairway has demonstrated a commitment to working with the neighbors. In a community of 8,000 people living in Beaverdale, you're never going to have unanimous opinions on one subject. And I respect differing opinions, but the vast majority of the people I've spoken with, and I've been connected to this community for 16 years, involved with both the membership in B&A and the Fall Festival for 7 years. I would say at least a vast majority of people support Fairway in this project as is, and I recommend we vote in favor of the current site plan as proposed by staff.
Thank you, Francis. This is Emily Webb, and my mother actually works at Fairway in Emmitsburg, Iowa. So not here, but I can attest to how good they are to her, and they're just a great employer to that community as well. And so I really appreciate what you said and agree that I think Fairway has done a good job here, and they're good to their employees and proven to be good to their community, the community that they serve. So I am also in favor of that, Francis. Did you want to make a motion?
Yes, motion.
Let's hope we get more discussion before the motion goes out.
We can do that.
Is that okay, Francis? Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Greg Wattier. Sorry, I abruptly cut you there. I kind of want, there's several things I'd like to share with the board or give my thoughts before a motion's made or a vote. First of all, I am in huge support of a small grocery store meat market in this location. I did vote to approve their site plan when it came through, or I'm sorry, the rezoning. I think this is absolutely a fundamental thing that's missing, and I think it's great. I have some pretty serious reservations with the current site plan and architecture, and I just want to share a few of them with the board. First of all, to be quite frank, I feel like this is trying to fit too much a typical model in a very unique urban setting. I would liken it to taking a template hotel that goes on a freeway and putting it in a downtown or something. It doesn't work. I think there needs to be rethinking. For instance, the front entry should not be on the street a token entry. I think it's very evident in their architecture with that sort of raised hat form, which I think is over their vestibule. I can't quite tell on these elevations. And the large vestibule to the backside. That this store is very dominant, oriented towards the parking lot. I personally feel that they need to, someone brought up the Ace Hardware, which I think was a Walgreens, and I'm not sure if it had a previous life, has an entry that faces their parking lot, but it also is at the corner and addresses the street. And I think that's the key here. You know, I understand theft prevention and the idea of two entries is not a good idea. But it could be one entry that maybe instead of being on Beaver, maybe it's on Urbandale or it's at the corner. I adamantly believe this entry needs to be moved to the pedestrian sidewalk. So whether it's Urbandale or even further around, I could get my head around it. And I think the second issue I have is with their patio area. I don't know that that's the best place. Again, from a pedestrian point of view, I kind of want it moved around on Beaver or something, and that may be a huge problem for them, but I think it further signals that everything is addressing the parking lot and not addressing the pedestrian activity. And then lastly, I really struggle, and I understand that, you know, Jason has informed me they've really kind of met the architectural guidelines, but to be quite frank, I feel like I've seen this design in a couple different suburbs, and I don't usually say that. That's pretty rude of me, but this does not feel like something that's place specific to Beaverdale. I really struggle with its architectural design, even though there's probably nothing I can do about that. So I think those are my site plan issues and my architectural concern. And because of that, if those things can't rectify, I would not support this solution. Thank you.
This is Lisa Howard, and thank you, Greg. I'm in full agreement. I'm struggling with this. I know that the residents really want to see Fairway come in, but I know it's affecting a lot of people in the neighborhood, and I completely agree. So I would be opposed as well.
This is Will Page, sort of echoing what I've just heard from two other commissioners. And actually the staff recommendation addresses part of the problem. The staff recommendation wants a change to the look of what's supposed to be an entrance to make it look more like an entrance, but in point of fact, it isn't an entrance. And that's a design issue as well.
If I could add one more thing about transparent glass, I never did quite hear if their spandrel glass was part of their transparent calculation. But regardless, I actually think that unfortunately ACE proves to me that it's a bad idea. You know, it's a very dead elevation as you walk along. You know, once you pass walking the front entry and are heading towards the intersection, it's so unfortunate that that's just really a dead zone. And when you do that type of glass, it's very fake. To be honest, I would rather have no glass or a lot more transparency and really rethinking the plan. I remember when there was a meat market years ago when I moved here at the corner of Beaver, where it kind of bends to 42nd or whatever, where the MST bar is now, the restaurant. And that meat market had a beautiful front entry and the meat counter was in the back. And it was just a very awesome neighborhood meat market. And I know Fairway can be one as well. But I think they need to rethink this typical plan. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Rocky. Francis, did you make a motion?
Yes, I made the motion. We pass support staff.
Okay, should we take a vote on that motion? Or is there any other comments from Commissioner? All right, Tyler.
All right, Steve Wallace.
I vote yes.
Okay, Carolyn Jennison.
We're just voting on the design, correct?
That's correct.
I'm going to say no.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
No.
Abby Chungith.
No.
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
Will Page.
No.
Johnny Alcivar. Johnny, you there? Okay, we'll move on. Emily Webb.
Yes.
And Lisa Howard.
No.
And Johnny, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
No.
All right. So that motion carries, or excuse me, fails 4-6.
Okay, so can we move on to item 10?
Emily, Madam Chair, this is Glenna Frank with the legal department. Just as a reminder, I know that I do this quite often, but the legal department asks that when a motion fails at the Plan and Zoning Commission level, that an affirmative motion be requested to be made to see if that would pass. So in this event, the affirmative motion would be denial rather than approval, or a different motion to approve with different conditions, for example. But we do typically ask that an affirmative motion be made so that if an appeal to council is taken, or if it's in a recommendation, for example, that would automatically go to council, we have an affirmative motion going to the council. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Will Page then. I move that that we deny this, which we have, but that we request a revisit of the design to address the concerns that the commission discussed among themselves.
Okay, Glenna, would that be appropriate for what you need?
Yes. So what I think it would be applicable, and Commissioner Page can correct me if needed. The motion is to deny with the directive to Fairway, the applicant, that they review the design again to see that whether the commissioner's concerns can be addressed.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Will, and thank you, Glenna. Tyler, I think we need you to call the roll again.
All right, I would love to. Lisa Howard?
Yes.
Okay. Emily Webb?
No.
Johnny Alcivar?
Yes.
Will Page?
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato,
No.
Abby Chungus,
Yes.
Greg Wattier,
Yes.
Francis Bogus,
No.
Carolyn
Yes.
Dennison,
Yes.
and Steve Wallace. Steve?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries 7-3.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. We will move on to number 10. A request from IPE 1031 REV 353 LLC, represented by Blake Pollyi, for the following regarding the property located at 505 Sheridan Ave. Determination as to whether the requested zoning is in conformance with Plan DSM. Rezone property from I-1 to I-2 to allow existing property to be considered for conditional use. And Jason, I believe you are up.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen, the city's planning staff. This is an aerial identifying the subject property on the north side of Sheridan Avenue to the east of 6th Avenue. Existing building, have a storage parking yard to the north. Photograph looking, this is that building. Some of this is land that's adjoining property, but looking towards the east and slightly north towards the site. And then this is from the opposite end, looking northwest with the site back here in the background. A little bit of other land in the way, but just to be able to give you a full perspective. Site sketch from the applicant, showing where they have been and would like to continue to store portable restrooms. You received a copy of the staff report in the packet. We analyzed it, discussed some enforcement history. There has been ongoing enforcement issue here, as noted in the report for since August of 2020. A lot of the complaints and the issues have revolved around odor and its impact on the surrounding area. In looking at rezonings, our first charge is to compare it against the Plan DSM, the future land use map, and the goals within the plan. If you look just at the map, this area is kind of this broader area is designated for industrial development, which, this generally I-2 is industrial development. But when you get dial in a little bit more and look at some of the goals, particularly the goals of making sure we have proper transition and that industrial uses aren't creating negative impacts on other uses in the area. Staff does not believe that the proposal complies with the comp plan or with the goals of the comp plan. Specifically, we've identified that its impact and its manner of operating is having negative consequences or negative impacts on the surrounding area with odor specifically. With that, we are recommending denial of the request. This is the response map. The areas in red represent owners that we received response back from that had a signature with their response. We have seen other emails. I will just go ahead and go through some of this. We also received a very lengthy letter from a nearby property owner. I have it in the file. I'm going to assume that they're here tonight and can provide a summary of this, but it is here. We can come back to it at any point. I think they did an in-depth job of documenting their concerns with how it's operated and impacts on the area, provided a few photographs. think there was some temporary sewer storage occurring on site. Some information on their concerns on health and environment. I'll let them get into that a little deeper. This provided information on zoning, which we've covered. We also, the applicant, this item was continued, so neighborhood outreach could have a little more time for the applicant to conduct that. And they did provide us with a couple of emails and some summary of their efforts. I have that as well. This is the project engineer. It's email just summarizing their effort, and then have a few emails from a couple adjoining property owners. I'll let the applicant go into a little more detail on their neighborhood outreach efforts. Happy to answer any questions you might have for staff.
All right, thanks, Jason. We'll now ask the applicant to present for 10 minutes. Please state your name and address.
We have 515-577-2451. You've been given the opportunity to speak. Are you the applicant or are an interested party that would like to speak on the item? Go ahead and unmute yourself with *6 on your phone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Chairman, members of the commission, this is Eric Cannon, 2727 Southwest Snyder Boulevard, here on behalf of Snyder Associates, representing the property owner, who is also on the call, as well as the current tenant of King's Throne, who I believe is on the call as well, and would be happy to answer any questions that anybody has. We are here tonight asking for rezoning. We've had several discussions with staff. I know this use is a little tricky. It's not black and white as far as the zoning goes. There was a lot of discussion, and I think the zoning official ultimately felt that the rezoning was required, as well as some conditional use from Board of Adjustment for this use to stay here. So that is why we are in front of you tonight. The all intended purposes of the tenant going in here was that it was an industrial use in an industrial zoning district. And after some determination, again, by the zoning official, they determined that it would require this route. So that was why we are here tonight. I know the use of portable restrooms can be a tricky area as far as some perception to the use and the operation of the facility. I do want to be clear that we are only talking about the storage of clean plastic containers. I get the connotation that comes with portable restroom facilities, but there is no human waste stored on site. They are completely emptied and cleaned at the wastewater treatment facility in the city of Des Moines before they are brought onto this property. So this is literally a staging ground for clean plastic containers that are used for obviously their contracts that they have throughout the community. Again, I know this is something there has been a lot of discussion, a lot of rumors, but I do want to make sure that is the intended operation and goal here. Any conditions that would be required, we're willing to discuss and have those conversations. All fencing, any items like that would be required by code or anything else, more than happy to accommodate those things. So appreciate everybody's time on this. As far as the community outreach, due to COVID, as you guys know, we were not able to hold a neighborhood meeting. We did provide a neighborhood letter to the notification district, which was consistent with the limits that the city reached out to for the public hearing. We did receive one call and 2 emails in regards to the use in the facility. One stated they had no issues with the rezoning and just wanted to get some clarification. The school district reached out with concerns with screening as far as the fencing being required. And obviously we're willing to accommodate any requirements from the city to meet that item there. And there was concerns regarding the holding and containing of human waste on site. And we communicated that is not the case at all. There's no grounds or any permits that would even meet that requirement for this location. So again, we are talking about storing clean plastic containers. We understand that the use does cause some concern for some folks, but willing to talk to you guys and hopefully find a resolution to be able to move forward. So happy to answer any questions you have, and we'll leave it up to the property owner or the tenant to offer any additional communication.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers and support in the audience tonight? As a reminder, *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. Do we have any speakers in opposition? I see a hand raised, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself, Harry. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Harry and Tracy, actually.
Hello.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. As you pointed out, as you shared, our opposition's already on record. I'd like to add to that, or I guess maybe clarify three things. First, based on what we've experienced during the past year, the proposed use statement seems a bit disingenuous. Outdoor storage yard for portable toilets doesn't quite capture the nature of what we've felt, seen, and smelled. Maybe a year ago, a huge excavator came in, was owned by DeCarlo Demolition. They spent probably, I don't know, a day digging a Volkswagen-sized pit in the yard out there, which I think was then maybe lined with concrete, and possibly 2 large plastic underground storage containers were put in. And now it looks like there are like concrete platforms on top of it with maybe a hole. So presumably a waste drop station. We were thinking, bring in the chemical toilets, drop the waste, store it for a bit, vacuum it into tankers, and take it off site. Probably over the past year, I think our building's been filled with sewage smell for hours, 3 times, 4 times. That seems to occur when a truck is actively pumping waste. I don't know if they're vacating the tanks that were buried underground, or if they're moving from porta potty to tanker truck. But whatever is being evacuated from those trucks smells. And depending on the direction the air is blowing, that smell can hit you. So that's affected us. Of course, the unsightliness of the toilets out our southern windows, not thrilled with it. But everybody has to exist somewhere, and I realize this is kind of an easy target. But in our opinion, it doesn't appear to be dry storage. What we've witnessed is a waste processing and transportation depot, and I think that has other implications in terms of zoning, the tanker truck traffic and things like that. Item 2.2, irrespective of current use, I2 allows for the high potential for external impacts of noise, vibration, odor, hours of operation, and traffic. What next? If this tenant pulls out, I think Alter Recycling is zoned I2. It's kind of a small property for that, but we really don't want car crushing and metal processing next to us. The third point, the neighbor to our west. In your graphic, there was a red, blank red, with the northern neighbors. They took occupancy of 516 New York Avenue in February. They do not have a mailbox. It is a church with a congregation of probably 40 people. They hold Bible studies and services 2 to 3 times a week. And on Wednesday afternoons, they distribute food out front of the building, kind of like a pantry type thing. I spoke to the pastor, Mark Reitz, because of the fact that he doesn't have a mailbox. He said, I didn't receive a postcard. I didn't know this was happening. I am absolutely opposed. We do not want that type of operation or anything with the potential for disrupting our church occupying the ground immediately to the south of us. And I asked him, can I quote you on that? Can I say that you're a church? And he said, yes, absolutely. But he didn't seem very technologically adept or whatever. So if somebody could get a postcard to him, then you would have one more opinion on the matter, and that would complete the row of north-facing neighbors. So I think that's pretty much all we have to say. The rest is pretty well documented with the social or with the environmental justice implications and current zoning and the the fact that other schools don't have things like this on their borders. We covered all that. You're welcome to share the document. You're welcome to share the video with the discharge into the air that we filmed. That's currently hosted on our website, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions on what we've experienced or witnessed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other speakers in the audience in opposition or neutral? Seeing none, do we have any commissioners with questions about the issue? All right, the applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal.
This is Eric Cannon again with Snyder & Associates. Blake, I'm not sure if you're on, if we're able to respond. I'm not familiar with the operations items that were outlined.
I see Blake has his hand raised.
Yeah, and I've given it, he's unmuted now.
Blake Paulion, 4300 Northeast 14th Street in Des Moines. So those underground tanks, they did put them in. We have since removed them. There will be no human waste stored on site. We did talk with the tenants. We were kind of unaware when they did it, and since we've encountered all this, we have told them they will not be doing that anymore. They will only store clean portable restrooms on site going forward. And I hope that kind of answers the clean. There will be no waste on site. I don't know how else to say that. But Eric, if you have anything else to say regarding that.
All right, if there's no other comment, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Madam Chair, this is Greg Wattier. I got a question for staff.
Yes. Go ahead.
Am I wrong or right? This feels like less of a rezoning and more of a Board of Adjustment, special use sort of permit. That it reminds me of conditions or situations where there may be someone wanting to have a restaurant or a bar or something, and there's some contention and some concern that they haven't done a good job in the past. And so that's a mechanism, if they get that approved, that it can be revoked or paid attention to by zoning enforcement. And is that been talked about, or does that make any sense in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it feels similar because there's an enforcement history here.
Right.
But from a zoning regulation standpoint, the use that the zoning enforcement officer has determined this, where this falls in the categories is something that needs to be under the I2 zoning. And then actually anything that's and within I2, it'd still be a conditional use. They'd still have to go to the board where those particular conditions would be looked at. I mean, it is a little interesting, or I do think there's the question of, if they're truly just storing clean units there, is that the same if the commission wanted us to look into that, I'd suggest you continue it. I don't think just purely from the question of does I2 zoning make sense here, regardless of the enforcement history or the use, just really does I2 make sense? I don't think it does. I mean, if you look at the size of the parcel, you look at the limited size of the parcels around it, and just the kind of the mix of uses with, restaurant use to the school, I think it's a fine area for light industrial warehousing type uses, but the kind of more heavy industrial use I don't think belongs here. So I don't think, regardless of what the applicant has said, that we're changing their model, that just purely the question of I2 does not make sense here.
So Jason, did you just allude to if it actually is empty, clean units that by right they can leave it the zoning as is and do that?
No, I don't know that for a fact. What I'm getting at is if the commission was inclined to want to see if there was a way to resolve it without either with conditions or having the zoning enforcement officer fully vet or explore what happens if it's, how they operate, then, I would suggest you continue the item and we explore that a little further. I wouldn't make any assumptions tonight that if all the units are cleaned elsewhere, that they can do it by right. But I'm just saying that we would need to look at all of that further.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Will Page here. North High School is right across the street from this. I can hardly imagine kids going to North High School and being taunted and maybe even bullied by kids from other schools. You go to North High School, you know what you're worth. I mean, really, I move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Will. Are there any other comments, or can we have Tyler call?
Will, this is Greg Wattier, and I'm wondering if you would accept an amendment. I would be interested in continuing, Will, to see if staff can help them figure out how to do something within their current zoning rights. I wouldn't want to preclude that. I would agree with your motion that I'm not in support of a rezone, but I wonder if you would entertain giving them the option or the opportunity for staff, like Jason and I were just talking about, to research what they can do within their current zoning rights.
No.
Thank you.
Any other comments before we take a vote? All right, Tyler, there's a motion on the table from Will to move staff.
All right, Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
John Yasabar.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato.
Yes.
Abby Chunga.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you. And Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries 10-0.
All right, thank you, Tyler. We'll move on to item 12. A request from Storage 5 Des Moines, LLC, represented by Chris Catania, for review and approval of a public site hearing plan 334 Southwest 8th for a type 2 design alternative to allow renovation and conversion of the existing downtown general building for 708 708 self-service storage units. Jason?
Yeah, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen, planning staff. This is, we really just have one issue to focus on with this project, the question of undergrounding of utilities. But to get everybody familiar with it, it's just south of West Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. along Southwest 8th Street, and you can kind of see the viaduct starting along the building here in this aerial. Photograph of the property, as noted, reading the agenda there, it's using or converting it to a self-service storage facility. Just general site plan. Landscaping sheet. Copy of the staff report was in your packet with the criteria for granting relief. You know, the overhead utility line question is one that the commission sees on, you know, somewhat regular basis. It's not so the types of things that we talk about, you know, and considering waiving the requirement, it should be fresh in your mind, but just, you know, typically we're looking at, you know, what a percentage of the budget, how does it relate to the overall scope of the project as far as magnitude and impact? In this case, the building permit value for the project is about 1.9 million. That's just the building permit value. The estimate to do the undergrounding is 115,000, which is about 6% of the value of that building permit. So we think from a perspective of the scale to the scale of the project, we think it's appropriate to have that undergrounded. There was some correspondence with Mid-Am and that included a comment of questioning whether or not there was space with some other facilities to do the undergrounding. If I go back to the aerial, or not, excuse me, the aerial photograph, you can kind of see that area is a little bit narrow where it would need to be undergrounded with the viaduct there. When we followed up with Mid-Am, the individual that we spoke to thought that there's actually an opportunity to do it, but we were hoping that person could circle back with the one that provided the initial comment. We have not received an additional follow-up from them. We did reach out to them today. We're hoping to get more information from them. We haven't received that yet. I tend to believe that there's an ability to do it there. It might take a little more attention to detail. It might take a little more removal of concrete than what might, you know, typically be expected. I also wonder if the initial person that looked at this was only really looking at the area that's kind of, if you take what's back, you know, curb here. This obviously there's no curb along here where this parking is, but if you look at this area, that is fairly narrow. But there could also be an opportunity to do the power lines in the paved area. Those are kind of our general thoughts right now. I still recommend that the commission deny the request. I think if there is concern that maybe we might get additional feedback from Mid-Am down the road that would suggest there are physical barriers, that the commission is concerned with that, you could include in your motion of denial that it's denied unless additional information is provided that demonstrates that it's physically impossible to the satisfaction of the planning administrator. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jason. Ask the applicant to present. You have 10 minutes, and please state your name and address.
Please use the raise hand function.
There we go.
All right, Chris, go ahead and unmute yourself and give yourself an introduction. Thank you.
Great. Chris Catania, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, I'm the developer. I have also John Clark, the architect, on the line, and Bob Gibson, the civil engineer. Again, we're requesting the type 2 design alternative, eliminating the requirement to bury these power lines. The reasons which were kind of highlighted there, it's what I'm being told by Mid-American is different. We were told originally that it can't be done. It's not feasible or highly unlikely due to the amount of utilities in the row already. they can't give me a definitive cost, and in fact stated that, quote unquote, it's packed with existing facilities and doubtful there's even room. So it's actually new to me that someone else has said something different. Secondly, cost estimate is 6%. It could go up from there. It's almost like an open checkbook, which, you know, from a planning purpose with lenders, I don't know how someone does a project like that. Logistically, the line itself obviously has to go underground. There's argument if it's going to start on our side of Tuttle, which it should if we're going to have to pay for it. So there's going to have to be a down guy right there at the corner of Tuttle and the viaduct, which would then encroach on the ADA parking spaces of the property. The lease office for the storage facility is at that corner. So there's considerable logistics for ADA parking required in that section. At the end of 8th, where it currently goes over City Road, it's going to have another down guy and then, or up and then go across the road. So Mid-American, again, in my communications with them, even prior to purchase, because they'd worked with Hubble on several different options that they were trying to get done, none of which worked. The communications to me are that it's not feasible, it's cost prohibitive, and thus the reason for the type 2 design alternative request. And I appreciate everybody's consideration. Happy to answer questions. And again, 2 professionals on the line as well that can answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any speakers in the audience in support of this? Any speakers in opposition? A reminder, *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. I'm not seeing any. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this point?
I guess this is Greg Wattier again. I guess the question or comment I have is I'm sort of hearing 2 things here. You know, Jason, you have in your report a dollar amount and a percentage, and then I'm hearing the applicants say that's new news to them and they believe it's borderline not possible or something. And I think I heard Jason say if we could get in writing out of Mid-Am, whatever it is, whether it's 115,000 or not possible or 1.2 million, I'd rather have a few facts that are aligned, unless I'm misunderstanding this.
If I could provide just a point of clarification, I think the dollar figure in the email that was referenced, we took the high end of that dollar figure. And I just want to clarify, the reason we asked the staff is because the comment that it was not highly unlikely, that when you're in this business for as long as I've been doing this, you ask questions and you don't just, that always seems, I want to know why, what's highly, what is it? Where are the obstacles? And then when we reached out to Mid-Am, the individual that we were able to make contact with wasn't sure that that was accurate. So that's why we continued to follow it. We really started that conversation looking to try to bolster, the information or disprove it. But that's, what our job is. And unfortunately, we didn't have that loop completely closed. That's why I'm willing to, if we can provide more, we get more information that's definitive of what's really there and what the obstacles really are, I'm willing to consider that as staff.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no other comment, I don't think the applicant needs a rebuttal if there's nothing to rebut. So I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the commissioners for their thoughts on this.
Madam Chair, this is Johnny Alcivar. I feel like based on the information that we have, it sounds like the applicant's concern is mostly that the percentage could go above and beyond the 6%. So I wonder if we can move staff with the condition that it stays at that 6% or below.
All right, any comment on that from commission before we vote? And is that Jason or Glenna, is that something we can actually do?
Yeah, Glenn, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that. I mean, I think that you certainly have the ability to do, add all sorts of conditions or stipulations. That might make it a little, I suppose the applicant would probably maybe put a little more emphasis on maybe getting some of those numbers shored up early on in the process, because I suspect they're going to, that uncertainty, I think that was part of what they were saying was something that, that makes it a little harder as they move forward with their financing and stuff. So, but we certainly could try to work with them to resolve that.
Johnny, this is Greg Wattier, and I was wondering if I could offer a friendly amendment to basically remove your stipulation to just move staff.
Sounds good.
Do I want to clarify, when you say staff, do you mean as written in the report, or as I made the comment that unless they can provide more documentation to the satisfaction of the planning administrator?
I would offer that as a friendly amendment to you, Johnny, to replace what the 6% number and just say what Jason said.
Yeah, I think that works as written. I just wanted to, address some of the concerns from the applicant, but I'm okay with that amendment.
Okay, Tyler, I think we're ready for a vote.
If I may, this is Glenna. Can I just clarify the motion? If I understand the motion, it is to approve the deny the type 2 design alternative subject to the applicant providing proof of cost. If you could restate the motion, please. I need to understand it a little bit better, I think.
I believe the motion is just as written by staff, so moving staff recs.
So,
okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't know. So I think what the friendly amendment was trying to achieve is that it was recommended denial of the request as proposed, but approval if the applicant is able to provide additional information to the satisfaction of the planning administrator. Does that make sense or not, Glennon?
That was my intent.
That's why I was asking, and I don't think, unfortunately, that we can have it both ways. So it's either going to be denied, and perhaps they can come in with additional information and appeal the denial and show the additional information to council, for example, and maybe staff would have a different take on it at that level. Or you approve it,
or we can
and require as a condition that they come in and show the cost, but there's really nothing to do once it's approved. I mean, once it's approved, it's.
Glenda, they would have we'd have the option to continue this, since this is new information to the applicant, these dollar amounts. We could continue this if the applicant would prefer to not have us vote tonight.
That would also be preferable to trying to do a hybrid deny and approve motion.
Chris, I've given you the ability to talk. Chair, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to go ahead and interject and let Chris speak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
again-
I was going to suggest that. So I think that's a great idea.
Well, I need to know the ramifications of continuing it because I'm looking for a permit. I got to get started. I can't even get the Mid-American out there to start doing work without the permit to start the work. And I need the site plan approved. So if that's going to delay everything, I don't know what Mid-American is going to do between now and the next meeting. I mean, I'd rather get started and then have them come back and say, look, we started boring and we hit a fire line. We literally can't put it underground. It can't happen. Time is important. So the quicker we can get this project going, the quicker I can find out what's actually under that surface. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, we could do a couple of different things, Chris. They could just deny the request and you could move forward with your site plan. And if you have run into an obstacle, you could come back with an amendment. We'd process it then. I think the thought is if we continued it 2 weeks, maybe we'd have more definitive information from Mid-Am as to what the obstacles are, because the challenge we've had as staff is we just don't really understand, well, what do they mean and what areas were they looking at? We just need more detail to feel comfortable. And I know that, you're working hard on your project, but we apply this standard to a lot of folks. And so we want to make sure that we're being equitable in how we apply it. So we need to really make sure that if we're going to go down the path of saying, yeah, there's obstacles here, that I can be able to tell another developer, well, this is what the obstacles were here and why they got treated differently.
Understood.
So I guess it's up to, if you want to continue for 2 weeks to see if we can get something more definitive, that's fine. If you'd rather, I think they could move forward with denial and then you could just apply later for an amendment with, get your site plan approved, get started.
I think that's the way to go. Because I having worked with Mid-American thus far, I don't believe they're going to do anything. Because I've been trying to get definitive numbers for 8 months now, and just keep getting told, it's almost like they don't want to do it. It can't be done, or the cost is this, but it could go. It's almost unlimited how high it could go. So, in my opinion, deny it. Let's get started, and then we'll get more information as they actually get in there and start doing the work.
That works for me.
That said, Johnny, I would try to rescind my amendment, and you just go with your straight motion.
That works.
All right, Tyler.
All right, Emily Webb,
Yes.
Lisa Howard,
Yes.
Steve Wallace,
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison,
Yes.
Francis Bogus,
Yes.
Greg Waltier,
Yes.
Abby Chungeth,
Yes.
Rocky Sposato,
Yes.
Will Page,
Yes.
and Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
The motion carries 10-0.
Thank you. The next item we did have on moving to consent, but someone had raised their hand in the audience to keep it on the public hearing. So we will hear it and hopefully that person can talk now. It is a request from Dunto LLC represented by Adam Siren and Ryan Andrimi for the following items regarding property at 524 Indianola Road, 711 Monona Ave, 713 Monona Ave to be readdressed 550 Indianola Road. Review and approval of preliminary plat Monona Townhomes. Review and approval of a public site Monona Townhomes for a series of design alternatives listed 1 through 9. And Jason, you are going to speak to this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission, Jason Manis and the planning staff. I'll be just to the point. Can I show you the images? The applicant has agreed to the staff recommendation. So this is the aerial identifying the subject property on the kind of south side of Indianola Road, south of the Raccoon River, south of the downtown area. Good views of the downtown. It's a row home project, kind of tiered up the hill. Tuck under garage. There was a whole series of relief needed that has to do with building placement, building orientation. And really what's driving that is the unique and challenging grade of the site. And that's why staff was able to be supportive of having units that had a garage door that faced the street, units that didn't all front onto a public street or a private drive. There was a couple of things with some utilities and some stucco material that we had some concerns with. This is just the plat document, just allows that to be reshuffled as far as property lines to coincide with the project. Let me get to the staff recommendation. So we recommended approval of the plat subject to administrative comments. Then we recommended denial of items 8, 9, and 10, which are the complete waiver of the utilities, the use of stucco material, and then the and transparency along Monona. And then we had we offered approval of the following, which was to waive the undergrounding of the utilities and providing galvanized metal streetlight poles and matching fixtures along Monona Avenue. The logic there is that the applicant doesn't own all the land in the area, and the lines, the poles, they feed the power to the properties on the other side of the street. So it's not practical for the applicant to underground it and while impacting other property owners' electrical service. Why we didn't recommend approval of it as written is because there was also a request to waive it along Indianola Road, which we're asking the applicant to do that, and he's agreed to go ahead and take care of that along Indianola Road. Then we had the other design alternatives that we were being supportive of. We did have some conditions here. We just we had some thoughts that maybe there should be a little more landscaping as far as some shrubbery along the fence along Indianola Road. Wanted to make sure we had adequate sidewalk connectivity within the development. And then some additional transparency on the end units that are facing Monona. And then just standard administrative comments, compliance with that. This is the notice area. We did not receive anything, any written comment. I'm not aware of any emails or phone calls that we've taken on it either. Happy to answer any questions you might have for staff.
Thanks, Jason. Applicant, you will have 10 minutes and please state your name and address. *9 for raise hand, *6 for unmute. You see the hand raised.
Yeah, Daniel, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Dan. I'm with Bishop Engineering. I'm here with the applicant Adam Searan, 3501 104th Street, Urbandale, Iowa. I think you did a pretty good overview of kind of the constraints we're working around. Like you said, there's a pretty steep hill that we're building into, kind of limits some of the connections, and those type 2 design alternatives kind of build off of each other. We've given kind of exhibits to show that we've done everything we can to comply. I think since it was kind of consent, I'll just kind of wait for if there's any opposition, and we can kind of go from there.
Sounds good. Do we have any speakers in the audience in support? Raise your hand or unmute. Do we have any speakers in opposition?
Use the *9 on your phone. Okay. Use *6 to unmute yourself. There you go. Go ahead and give us your name and address, please.
Arnold Willis, 1974 Summit Street. I live up atop the hill above this Monona. And my concern is water. You have 0.84 acres of ground, and you're going to use paving, and from what I've seen, paving and building is going to occupy about 76% of that 0.84 acres. Where's that water all go to? Runs out in Monona onto Indianola Road in the wintertime. And there's been several times in the past we have ice down in the bottom of the hill on Indianola Road from that. I've lived up there 44 years. And Monona is a very tricky drive in the wintertime. I do not think this is a good idea. I think you're going to have water issues from the hydraulics in that hill. And I think in 20 years, you're going to have some junk buildings.
Sir, I didn't catch, for the record, I didn't catch your name. Could you say it again?
Sure. Arnold Willis.
Thank you.
Any other speakers in opposition? All right, commissioners, do you have any questions at this point?
Madam Chair, this is Johnny Alcivar. I have a question for staff.
Yes.
I believe Jason mentioned that we're taking a closer look at the landscape plan. I wonder if there's a little more shrubbery or evergreens proposed along that alley. I'm very familiar with this area because I live in the neighborhood, and I know there's like a bar or two along those with the neighbors. So I'm wondering if with the evergreens, potentially we can avoid a future problem with noise complaints and all of that.
Yeah, let me get back to that landscaping sheet, and then we can kind of look at it a little closer here. So yeah, Johnny, you mentioned some need for maybe some additional buffering plantings along the alley. You know, there does look to be some space for maybe something that's narrow and growth pattern. Were you thinking, and I'm sorry, I was unfortunately, you know, being technologically challenged there, trying to get to the sheet. Were you speaking more concern for future residents or for the owner on the property on the other side of the alley?
I think for both residents and for the business owners, just avoiding that long-term problem. I know that the council has had those conversations in downtown, which is fairly close. So potentially adding some evergreens here on that side would help us avoid that problem in the long run.
Well, I would say as staff, you know, if I think there's merit to that idea, and if whoever would make a motion, you certainly could add that, maybe to add evergreens to the satisfaction of planning administrator.
Okay. Would the applicant like to rebut? You have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
This is Dan again. So I'll address the water question first. There will be detention provided on site per typically what is required by the city of Des Moines. We'll have intakes at the edges of all the drives, and then one in the center of the northern drive, which is actually lower than Monona, so the water will be flowing in, and then on the northern ones, we will catch that water before it gets to the roadways. So if anything, it should help. We are increasing the impervious, obviously, but we are providing detention that wasn't there before all that water would have flown down to Indianola. So hopefully it improves the situation. as far as landscaping, we're open to adding extra evergreens or any kind of sound barrier along that alleyway.
Thank you, Chris. No other comments from anyone. I'm going to close the public hearing and let the commissioners speak.
Madam Chair, Rocky, I'll move staff.
Thanks, Rocky.
Madam Chair, this is Johnny Alcivar. I would like to make a friendly amendment to consider the evergreens along the alley to avoid any future issues with the property owners to the east.
Yes, sir. No problem, Johnny. I agree.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, Will Page.
Yes.
Rocky Esposado.
Yes.
Abby Chungith.
Yes.
Greg Wattier.
Yes.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Emily Webb.
Yes.
And Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. Moving on to item number 14. We've got a request from Zulima Mendez and Louis Garcia for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for following type 2 design alternative for property located at 1640 East University Ave to allow construction of a 140-foot gazebo accessory building type an 80 square foot outbuilding without a principal structure. And I will let Jason have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen with planning staff. So this is a little bit of an unusual case. I don't recall the Commission being asked for something along these lines where it's an accessory building going in on a parcel where there isn't a primary building. The code set up to say, you know, accessory uses, accessory buildings really should be following more of a primary use. So anyway, in a staff, we've kind of kicked around this one too. It's been a little bit of a struggle as we've gone back and forth, and I'll share some information with you, and you'll probably see why. East University Avenue to the south, Sampson to the west here. You can see the parking lot. It's a freestanding parking lot. The applicant has operated a food truck there for some time now, and has gone through the mobile vendor process and operated under that. Just some photographs of the site. There is a trash enclosure, some gravel and bench area, picnic table, sorry. The shed was already installed before this came to planning staff. You can see in that picture the shed's fairly small, so the impact of it is pretty limited. Just a few more. The site sketch, when they submitted this, it does show the shed. They also added like to do a gazebo. We're not 100% sure what the design of that is. We have a footprint, which we put on the agenda. Planning staff did reach out to the applicant late in the afternoon. Our understanding is the concept is generally more of a trellis type structure, so maybe not really a gazebo in the traditional sense of you have a bigger building or structure with a full, complete roof. So maybe we can get a little more information and clarity on that. In the staff port, we kicked around what to do here. The shed's fairly small. On one hand, that seems, fairly, the impact of that's pretty minimal. Wasn't 100% sure what the gazebo intention was. I think with it being, if we can confirm that it's more of a trellis, it's a little less impactful than an actual gazebo. But really, as we took a step back, we started to ask ourselves, the concept of the food truck is it's really a transitional or temporary use. And the challenge we had is, where does the area as things moving to more of a permanent nature? And is that really the intent of the code, particularly, in the case of not having accessory structures on their own? It's really, that concept of building more permanence on a property is that there's a kind of a primary use that's there on a permanent nature. And with that, we did end up landing on recommending denial of the request. But we're really looking for your guys' input and feedback. This is, kind of a new case, a new situation for us. And so we welcome your guys' thoughts on it as well. But those are kind of the different things that we've thought through as we were formulating the recommendation. This is the notice area. See, we didn't get any responses. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have for staff.
Jason, this is Will Page here. Is the shed on a concrete slab or just on the site? Or tell me something about that, please.
Yeah, let's see if we can find a good picture. I'm not 100% sure. I think it might be sitting on wood, like kind of almost like a pallet. So I don't know that like a slab has actually been put down, but that's probably a good question from the applicant.
Thank you.
Jason, I have a question. Do you know if this property has received any complaints or if it has any violations or anything like that?
It did get into the planning process through an enforcement action. I don't know the history of that. I think that, obviously the shed's already there. So that I know that there was question about the, just how this all fit in the site plan review process that was presented to planning staff, but I think that all occurred after enforcement. I couldn't tell you if there was a complaint or if it was just how it was picked up. I just don't know that history well enough.
All right. The applicant now has 10 minutes, and please state your name and address. Looks like.
Go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, I'm unmuted. This is C, and I am the owner of this food truck vendor property. And basically, yes, the shed is not sitting on any slab. It is just there temporarily. We have been submitting some documentation. It was placed there, although I told the food truck vendor not to. He had already purchased it, thinking that it was going to be something easy because there was another vendor that had it. So, but it's not there permanent. And the reasoning, I think I looked it up because when the city lady called me, it's more of a pergola kit. It's not a gazebo. It's all wood and it's open at the top. And the reasoning we want this sitting area with the shaded, somewhat shaded, is for safety reasons for when people go eat. We've had a couple accidents where vehicles back up. And as you all know, the sitting area is basically in the same parking lot where vehicles parked. So instead of waiting for someone to get hurt, we would like to place a sitting area where you've already seen where the tables would be, and then we would be able to put this pergola, which we've looked it up both at Sam's Club and Menards. It's already a built thing that we would just place there. And it would be more for beautification purposes. I mean, instead of having a canopy or a tent that the wind breaks and then it blows, and hitting a vehicle, we would have something there that would be looking way better, beautified, and at the same time for safety reasons for the people, the customers that come and eat.
All right, thank you. Do we have any speakers in the audience in support of this item?
Use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone if you wish to speak.
Seeing none, any speakers in opposition? All right, any questions from commission for staff while we still have the public hearing open?
I guess I would have a question for staff based on their comments that their concern is that an accessory building structure, type of structure, will become a permanent structure without a principal structure. So how would knowing that it's going to be a pergola instead of whatever they thought it was going to be before, does that make it any better as far as knowing that it's not going to be a permanent structure, the structure that's going to be sitting there by itself if the principal use is removed?
I do think that the information the applicant has shared with us is helpful in understanding a couple things that were mentioned. You know, I think the pergola design is definitely, way more, way less impactful than a kind of traditional large gazebo. So I think that's beneficial. The other thing that kind of caught my ear is that the shed really is not intended to stay there on a permanent basis, that it's really, and maybe we could have the applicant speak to that a little bit more. As I think about maybe if the commission is wanting to issue the type 2 design alternative, that maybe there's some language in there that kind of focuses it in on that particular shed and the one, the pergola, and if they happen to be removed, it's not a free pass to do a larger, more permanent shed with a foundation or something along those lines. We might just make sure that we craft that in there, because the way it's being described at the meeting here and the additional information does make it seem pretty temporary in nature.
Yeah, this is Abby. I just have a question about the pergola. If that is something that we would approve, are there stipulations in code on how that is secured to the ground that they need to follow?
I don't know for a fact if they would need to put like a footing for each of the posts. They might need to. We would have to follow up with the building code folks, since it is a kind of a commercial activity versus one that you might have at home.
Yeah, Jason, this is Greg. I remember a few years ago when building department started requiring footings underneath outside coolers that restaurants or bars had. Prior to that, they just sat on the ground, but they were requiring it because they were concerned about trippability, freeze and thaw. Steps that were once 7 inches are now 10 inches. And so they did have a lot of those types of concerns.
I do know that, accessory building of 120 square feet or more would trigger a building permit. The gazebo, or not gazebo, but pergola would be larger than that, but it doesn't have walls. So I'm not 100% sure how that works. So we'd have to learn more about that. But even if the commission approved it, they still have to comply with building code one way or the other.
All right. At this point, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask staff for their thoughts on how to move forward.
Well,
or not staff, sorry, the commission.
Okay, I was gonna say.
It's been a long night.
Yep, I get it.
Madam Chair, this is Johnny. I'm just going to share my opinion with the rest of the commission and we can deliberate. I believe the request is very reasonable. It's trying to make the location more user-friendly, at the same time keeping in mind the safety of the individuals, that the customers, basically. It sounds like the concern that staff had was due to the potential permanent aspect of a gazebo. So I will probably support approving the type 2 design alternative, subject to a staff review, and if they can figure out what's going on with the shed, if that's not going to be there permanently, and if it is, then they'll probably need a slab of concrete to solve that. I don't think it's very intrusive as shown in the pictures. Those are my opinions at the moment.
Yeah, Johnny, this is Emily Webb, and I completely agree with what you just said.
And Johnny, this is Will, would you put that into a motion? I'd certainly support it if you did.
Sure can. I just wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity to share their thoughts, but I can move the motion to approve the type 2 design alternative for the pergola, subject to staff review. And if the shed is going to be there permanently, then it requires a slab of concrete. Does that work, Jason?
Yeah, that works. Thank you.
All right, Tyler, we're ready for you to call.
All right, Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Will Page.
Yes.
Rocky Sposato.
Yes.
Abby Chungith.
Yes.
Greg Wadier.
Yes.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Carolyn Jennison.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
And Emily Webb.
Yes.
And that motion carries 10-0.
Thank you, Tyler. Number 15 is our final item tonight. It's a request from Granite Castle LLC, represented by Ana Liaza Romo, for review and approval of a public site plan amendment for a type 2 design alternative for property located at 4552 East 50th to remove the public sidewalks shown on approved site plan and allow issuance of final certification of occupancy. And Bert is going to be sharing this item.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Bert Ross, planning staff for the city of Des Moines. Jason's been doing such a great job tonight. I feel bad for interrupting his flow. I should have let him handle this one as well. But the item before you is a request for waiver of the sidewalk. They had a site plan approved back in 2019 that showed the addition of a sidewalk on the, I apologize, I can't see the plus and minus buttons on my screen. They're there. So the site plan that was approved back in 2019 allowed for construction of a granite countertops business on the property. At that time, there was already a sidewalk along the east property line along East 50th Street, but the site plan required the provision of a sidewalk along the north property line. Now, if on your screen, north is to the right, along that frontage road along East Broadway Avenue. So what you're looking at now is the site plan that was approved back in 2019. They've since constructed the building and done all of the site improvements. However, they have not yet constructed the sidewalk along East Broadway. So this is photos taken from the intersection of East 50th and East Broadway, looking due west. You can see right where the sidewalk should go. And in this photo, you can also see the existing sidewalk that's along East 50th Street. And this is moving a little further south down East 50th Street. And then this is looking back east towards East 50th Street across the site. So that sidewalk that's missing should generally go in this location right here. As Mike Ludwig had mentioned earlier tonight, the pending code amendments that you recommended approval of tonight and that council will be considering later this month would not actually help this situation because the sidewalk in this location is considered a priority 1 sidewalk. So it is a higher priority than most sidewalks. So here's the site plan that they're proposing at this time. And again, it just eliminates that that east-west sidewalk along the north side boundary. So as far as the staff recommendation goes, we have recommended denial of the request. We do feel that it's reasonable to put in the sidewalk at this time. What I have on the screen right now is the owner's rationale for why they don't want to put in the sidewalk. And we can come back to this later when the applicant is presenting. And I also have this aerial photo right here that shows where the other sidewalks are in the area. Just point of reference is there's an existing sidewalk here along East 50th, and then there are a few segments along Hubble Avenue. But as a whole, that sidewalk would go in this location here, and it would not connect to any sidewalks to the west yet. So like I mentioned, staff believes that the sidewalk should be put in there. So we have recommended denial of the type 2 design alternative. So any questions for me?
Bert, is there I think this is a bus route as well. Is that right?
I know, I believe this is Hubble Avenue to the west, obviously is, but I think then that bus route turns east down Broadway Avenue. Jason, if you want to pull that up on Des Moines Maps, you can confirm, but I believe that there is a bus route that would go further east into the Altoona Walmart and into Altoona.
Yeah, I'll see if I can confirm that.
Thank you.
All right. The applicant has 10 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Looks like Oscar Romo has raised his hand.
Yes, Oscar, *6 to unmute.
This is Carol Lorenz on behalf of Granite Castle. What we are proposing is that since there are no sidewalks east or west of our property along that frontage road, it just seems that we shouldn't have to put a sidewalk there. I mean, there are no others in the area. The one on East 50th that goes to the bus stop, the bus stop is actually on Broadway. It's not on that frontage road. And there's no residential or pedestrian traffic in that area from the intersection at Broadway and Hubble Avenue to the Highway 65 overpass. There's no sidewalks. Ours would just be out there by itself.
All right. Do we have any speakers in the audience in support? Again, it's *9 for raise hand, *6 for unmute. Any speakers in opposition? And Jason says, yes, this is a bus route.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I just got that message. Any questions from the commissioners? All right. If no one has anything further, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, your thoughts?
Madam Chair, this is Johnny Alcivar. Based on the amendments to the code that we have approved earlier today and staff presentation telling us that there's sidewalk plus the bus route and that this is a priority 1 street, I'm going to move staff and recommend denial of the request.
Thanks, Johnny.
Ready to vote on that?
I think so. If no one else has anything further. Yep, Tyler, you can call the vote.
All right, we'll start with you, Emily Webb.
Yes.
Lisa Howard.
Yes.
Steve Wallace.
No.
Carolyn Jennison.
No.
Francis Bogus.
Yes.
Greg Wadier.
No.
Abby Chungith.
Yes.
Rocky Spizzato.
No.
Will Page.
Yes.
And Johnny Alcivar.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-4.
Thank you, Tyler. Are there any committee and directors reports or staff reports? All right. If not, then can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Hey, Madam Chair, I did want to mention that it's looking like we're going to be returning to in-person meetings in August now. Initially, we thought maybe July, but we did get word that it's going to be August now.
Thank you, Bert.
Yeah, sorry, I had my mute on. I don't have anything to add. So
Looks like someone has a hand raised. Oscar Romo.
That was the speaker for those.
the meetings, the item's over. So the meeting's, yeah.
Okay.
We can follow up with them if they have questions.
Do I need a motion to adjourn?
I believe so.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Great
Thanks,
job,
Emily.
Emily.
Yeah, thanks.